Friday, police executed another search warrant at Jorgensen's former home in Shoreview.
This case will likely span numerous cities and counties. Thankfully, cases like this are extremely rare, but they are reminders to all of us that monsters can be real.
St. Paul, one of Minnesota's oldest cities, is a place better known for its historic charm, snowy winters, and Minnesota nice reputation than for sinister crimes. On the surface, it seems like the last place you'd expect to find a gruesome mystery. But in the spring of 2023, behind the calm exterior of a quiet suburb, something dark was brewing. It started small, just a faint, unpleasant odor wafting through an unassuming apartment complex. Neighbors noticed, complaints trickled in, and what seemed like a minor annoyance would soon unravel into something far more sinister. At the center of it all was the accused, a person who, like so many before him, thought bleach, duct tape, and a bit of elbow grease could erase the evidence. On that subject, isn't it odd how some folks think they can outsmart everyone with nothing more than a trip to Home Depot and a few poorly worded internet searches? They buy what's essentially a murder kit and then Google such gems as, "How do I clean up a murder scene?" or "How do I dispose of a body without getting caught?" We see this time and time again. This story, though, didn't start with Google searches or receipts. It started with a smell, an unmistakable stench, and a property manager who had his suspicions. Let's dive in. In mid-May of 2023, complaints began piling up at the Century Ridge apartment complex in Maplewood, Minnesota. Residents were fed up with a foul odor seeping through the building, and it didn't take long for the apartment manager to take notice. According to an affidavit, the smell was described as like a dead animal or something that had died. It was unbearable. The manager confronted one of the tenants, a man named Joseph Jorgensen, better known as Joe, about the stench coming from his unit. But Joe wasn't very cooperative. He flat out refused to let the manager inside to investigate. Determined to get to the bottom of it, the manager returned 3 days later with a maintenance worker to inspect the unit. This time, they got inside, but Joe was verbally combative and physically blocked their access to one of the bedrooms, the same room where the smell seemed to be strongest. Frustrated, the manager gave Joe and his roommate an ultimatum. They had 1 week to clean the apartment, and they complied. Not long after, the manager and maintenance workers saw Joe carrying large black duffel bags out of the apartment. Something about the way he moved them, slow and deliberate, immediately raised suspicion. One of them even commented, "It looked like he was carrying a dead body." The circumstances were certainly suspicious, but without solid proof of a crime, they hesitated to call the police. It was a choice they would come to regret. What the Century Ridge apartment manager didn't know was that just a week earlier, 34-year-old Manijeh Starren, known as Manny by loved ones, had been reported missing by a family member. Manny was a mother of 3, someone who worked hard as a CNA and a home health aide in St. Paul. Born in Roseau, Minnesota, she was known for her kind spirit and quiet determination. She also struggled with mental health issues, and on April 21, 2023, she disappeared without a trace. An officer entered Manny's apartment with the property manager and found clear signs of a struggle: a bedroom window screen on the floor, a cracked TV screen, and a shattered microwave glass that had been cleaned up. In the bedroom, the bedsheet was partially removed, a foam mattress topper had a large cutout hole, and red stains were visible at the foot of the bed. The manager also noted missing items from the closet. Next, officers obtained a warrant to search and process Manny's apartment for forensic evidence. Crime scene technicians located evidence of large amounts of blood on the couch, the floor of the living room, and the kitchen. It was also apparent that someone had attempted to clean up the blood. Preliminary analysis shows that it was Manny's blood that was recovered from the scene. Investigators believe that someone was seriously injured or killed in the apartment. On June 6th, police asked the public for any information on what might have happened to Manny. As tips began to pour in, investigators made chilling discoveries. Detectives learned that Manny may have been afraid of her boyfriend. His name? Joseph Jorgensen. Joseph Stephen Jorgensen was born in June 1983 and spent most of his life in St. Paul. Most recently, he shared an apartment with a male roommate he'd known for many years. Before that, he owned a home valued at $200,000 in the 5000 block of Fernwood Street in St. Paul, where he resided until September 2022. Details about his education are scarce, but Joe worked in finance, holding a managerial role at Ameriprise Financial. Beneath this professional exterior, however, was a darker side. His criminal record, dating back to 2012, was extensive and included multiple DWIs, domestic assault charges, theft, and drug-related offenses. As investigators dug deeper into his relationship with Manny, a disturbing pattern of violence began to emerge. Family members recounted harrowing incidents of domestic abuse. On one occasion, Joe allegedly wrapped a rope around Manny's neck. One neighbor recalled seeing her with a black eye and red marks around her neck. When asked if she wanted to call the police, she responded, "That'll just make things worse." While detectives had plenty of speculation and suspicion, there was no hard evidence to implicate Joe. That would soon change, however, as the investigation would yield shocking findings. Detectives obtained surveillance video from Manny's apartment dated April 21st, the day she was last seen alive. The footage reportedly showed her running from her apartment, clearly in distress, with a man that fit Joe's description chasing her down. Moments later, he caught up, grabbed her, and forced her back inside. She was never captured on video again. This meant Joe was the last person to enter Manny's apartment after her disappearance and made no attempt to report her missing to the police. Additionally, investigators discovered that between April 21st and the 28th, Joe used Manny's keys to access her apartment more than 24 times. On April 28th, surveillance footage captured him carrying 2 duffel bags and a suitcase out of her unit, loading them into a pickup truck, and driving away. The truck was registered to a man who lived at the same Century Avenue apartment building in Maplewood, Joe's longtime roommate. If that wasn't incriminating enough, what investigators uncovered next left little room for doubt. With terms and phrases like jugular, what do police do with a missing persons report, and lime for soil, Joe's Google searches raised eyebrows. Incidentally, lime can speed up decomposition and mask odors. He also Googled how to clear browser cookies and remove GPS trackers. And it didn't stop there. Joe used Manny's payment card to purchase saran wrap, gloves, cleaning supplies, and disinfectant wipes from a local Dollar Tree store. Then there were the text messages. Just 2 weeks before Manny disappeared, Joe sent her a series of threats that were as cruel as they were ominous. One read, "Now you owe me 2 because you called the cops on me 2 times. Very clear I was of that being punishable by hanging. I'm giving you this plea bargain opportunity, so you're welcome." Another said, "Hope you die of a kidney infection, you blankety blank." With this evidence in hand, police determined they had sufficient probable cause that a crime had occurred. They secured a search warrant for Joe's apartment in connection with Manny's disappearance. However, what was meant to be a routine search quickly spiraled into chaos.
Good afternoon, my name is Sergeant Mike Ernster. That's spelled E-R-N-S-T-E-R. I'm the Public Information Officer for the St. Paul Police Department. Our investigators focused on an apartment earlier this week, on Monday, in relation to a search warrant in Maplewood at an address on Century Avenue. Our SWAT team executed the search warrant on behalf of our investigators. They encountered Jorgensen in the apartment where he started a fire, fought with officers, and attempted to disarm them. 2 officers were injured in this incident. Jorgensen was arrested on unrelated charges and booked into the Ramsey County Jail. A search of the apartment did reveal additional blood evidence that we believe is related to this case. As the investigation went on, a connection was made to a storage unit in Woodbury, Minnesota. It was located on the 800 block of Weir Drive. On Wednesday, June 28th, investigators executed a warrant at this storage unit and did discover human remains inside the unit. Our forensic services unit, as well as the Ramsey County Medical Examiner, did respond to the storage unit, and they processed it as if it was a crime scene. The remains in question were brought to the Ramsey County Medical Examiner's office for further examination. On Thursday, June 29th, yesterday, the Ramsey County Medical Examiner did identify those remains as Manijeh Starren of St. Paul. They also ruled that the cause of her death was homicide. Jorgensen still remains in the Ramsey County Jail, and the investigators forwarded their investigation to the Ramsey County Attorney's Office for review. This afternoon, the Ramsey County Attorney's Office have charged Joseph Jorgensen with the murder of Manijeh Starren.
On Monday, June 26th, just before 10 a.m., the St. Paul Police SWAT team executed a search warrant at Joe's apartment. The situation quickly escalated when Joe barricaded himself in his bedroom and started a fire. After forcing entry into the room, SWAT officers faced additional resistance as Joe fought with them and attempted to grab an AR-15 from one of the officers. He was eventually subdued, taken into custody, and transported to Regents Hospital for evaluation. Joe's roommate, who was also home at the time, locked himself in his bedroom during the raid but surrendered without incident. He was transported to the St. Paul Police Department for questioning. During his interview, the roommate, who claimed to have a traumatic brain injury that impaired his sense of smell, explained that he had known Joe for 30 years. He described limited interaction with Joe and little awareness of what was happening in the apartment, stating he worked weekdays and rarely engaged with the various women Joe brought home. But those were not the only individuals in the apartment. Perhaps most disturbingly, during the search, police encountered a woman in the apartment who had visible bruises, scratches, and redness around her neck. She told officers Joe had strangled and threatened to kill her, stating he had said, "The neighbors won't hear you scream." She was treated for minor injuries and released. Meanwhile, a review of Joe's phone records revealed that his cell phone had pinged near a storage facility in Woodbury on May 18, 2023. Armed with this information, police secured a search warrant for the storage unit. Shortly after, they discovered the remains of Manijeh Starren. But chillingly, that's not all they found, as information obtained from the search led investigators to a second storage unit in Coon Rapids.
All right, good afternoon. I'm here to provide an update in the missing person case involving Fanta Sayavong. Unfortunately, for the second time in a week, I'm here to report that we found a missing person deceased. Fanta's case began at the end of May when a tip came in to the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension's human trafficking tip line. That tip was from a concerned citizen, somebody who knew Fanta and was concerned for her welfare. They reported to us that Fanta was in an abusive relationship. They stated that Fanta was in a relationship with Joseph Jorgensen, and they had lost contact with her, and they were concerned for her safety. Our investigators received this tip, and they were in the middle of another investigation where Joseph Jorgensen was a person of interest. So they immediately became concerned for her safety and opened a missing persons case. That investigation led us to this week, where investigators went up to the 9100 block of University Avenue Northwest in Coon Rapids and served a search warrant on a storage unit located at that location. Investigators located what they believed to be human remains inside the storage unit. Our forensic services unit, as well as the Midwest Medical Examiner's Office of Anoka, responded to the storage unit and recovered those remains. They were brought back to the medical examiner's office, where today those remains were identified as Fanta Sayavong. The investigators today also served a search warrant in Shoreview at a residence. That search warrant was conducted by St. Paul investigators who were serving the warrant at a home that was previously owned by Joseph Jorgensen. We believed he was in that home until approximately September of 2022. The search warrant was conducted with the hopes of finding any evidence in relation to the death investigation involving Fanta Sayavong.
Cases like these are horrific, and they impact everyone in our community. Thankfully, cases like this are extremely rare, but they are reminders to all of us that monsters can be real. And we are committed, as your police department, to keeping our community safe from harm.
Fanta Sayavong was a mother of two and the youngest daughter in a family originally from Laos. Born in May 1990, she graduated from Eastview High School in 2008. Unlike her killer, she had no record of violent offenses. However, like Manny, she struggled with mental health challenges, a quiet battle that made her no less deserving of safety or dignity. On January 2, 2024, at the Ramsey County Courthouse, Joseph Jorgensen pled guilty to 2 counts of second-degree intentional murder. In exchange for his plea, prosecutors agreed to drop charges of arson, threats of violence, and attempting to disarm an officer stemming from his chaotic arrest at the Century Ridge apartment. In court, Joe admitted to being in relationships with Manny and Fanta at different times. He confessed to killing Manny in her St. Paul apartment in April 2023. According to a statement, an argument turned deadly when she demanded he leave. In a rage, he placed her in a chokehold and said he choked her out until she was no longer breathing. He then admitted to dismembering her body with a long razor blade and transporting her remains to a storage unit in Woodbury, where they were later discovered by police. Joe also confessed to killing Fanta 2 years earlier in 2021. He described a verbal argument at their shared townhome in Shoreview that escalated into violence. He admitted to beating her until he realized she was no longer alive. "I felt bad about it immediately afterward," he told the court, "but it was my intent at the time to kill her." Like Manny, Fanta's body was dismembered and hidden in a storage unit, this one in Coon Rapids. Joseph Jorgensen is scheduled for sentencing on February 28, 2024. He faces a maximum of 40 years in prison for each murder, with the sentences to be served concurrently. Intimate partner violence is a devastating reality, and in the cases of Manijeh Starren and Fanta Sayavong, its ultimate cost was their lives. It's important to be clear, the responsibility for their deaths lies solely with Joseph Jorgensen. His choices, his actions, and his violence ended their lives and robbed their families of 2 cherished women. Abuse does not just happen, and it is never the victim's fault. It is the deliberate decision of the abuser to harm, control, and, in this case, kill. Manny and Fanta were more than victims. They were mothers, daughters, and individuals worthy of safety and respect. And while Joseph Jorgensen will spend decades in prison, it doesn't erase the pain and loss he caused. That said, awareness is a powerful tool. By recognizing the signs of abuse and holding perpetrators accountable, we can work to prevent additional tragedies like this. Organizations, communities, and individuals all play a role in creating a future where everyone feels safe in their relationships. By talking openly about intimate partner violence and advocating for those who feel powerless, we take steps towards hope, a world where abusers are stopped before they choose to take another life.